What's the weirdest thing that you've seen at someone's house that they thought was completely normal? Once when I was a kid I was invited to stay over for dinner at a friend's house. My friend's mother poured a large quantity of ketchup into a cereal bowl, which the entire family all casually dipped their fingers into and licked throughout the meal. I was invited over to a friend's house for dinner for the first time. Now, for staging purposes, they all sit around the living room to eat as a family. They have these two large dogs. So, I ask beforehand, as I always do, what the rules are with the dogs and food. Am I supposed to ignore begging? Can I give them a bite? What kind of stuff can I feed them? Do they have to do a trick to get some? They tell me that not only can I feed them whatever I want, but that all the plates are given to the dogs after the meal and that the dogs would hassle you if you took the plate straight to the kitchen. So, I finish my meal, which was decent, and I lay my plate down for the dogs. They clean it up quite nicely. I pick it up to take to the kitchen and I ask if it goes in the sink or the dishwasher. They said to put it back in the cabinet because the dogs clean it good enough to eat off of. I laughed at the joke and then kinda reiterated my question. It wasn't a joke. My friend walked into the kitchen and put her plate, her boyfriend's plate, and her mom and dad's plate all in the cabinet with the other clean dishes. I could have been sick. I dropped all contact with them. That was just too much. TLDR. Their dishwashing was done exclusively by the dogs. Edited to cover autocorrect tracks. This was when I was a kid. I was at my friend's house, and her mom got us some orange juice with our lunch. When we finished eating she took the remaining juice from the cups and poured it back into the container. Even as a kid I thought it was disgusting. This is me reposting from the last time this question came up. But I feel like these people deserve the double shame. They keep a sewing needle pin stuck into their hand towel. I found it by reaching to use the hand towel to dry my hands and putting the pin through my finger. I was like WTF guys and they just shrugged us in. You don't have sharp objects hiding in towels? They then went on to explain that it was used for draining pimples. Kid in the home going to the fridge, grabbing a stick of butter, unwrapping it, taking a big bite, rewrapping and putting it back. When my brother and I were kids, we would often comment that our next door neighbor's house smelled like pee. One day my brother was playing video games with a kid from next door at his house and asked to use the restroom. The kid said, "We just pee here," and started peeing in the closet. My brother peed in there too. When in Rome. I met this kid in 3rd grade and he seemed normal. Cool kid. Funny. Anyway, I go to his house to work on a school project and his mother was a hoarder. Worst of the worst. She could have a marathon of the hoarders in her own home. I guess the kid thought it was normal because he had been living in it since he was born. He was kinda disheartened when he came to my house and didn't have to climb over mounds of trash to take a piss. I went to a friend's house and they had their halls lined with grandfather clocks. This was a little weird but nothing major. The weird part came when his dad told me and my friend, "Don't you kids go around telling anybody about my clocks." Now we'll never forget about his precious clocks. Paramedic here. 102-liter soda bottles filled with urine because the toilet is broken. But where was he pooping? Where was he pooping? Asterisk. Edit. Thought it was obvious but apparently not. This was in the course of my job duties, hence mentioning I'm a paramedic. Context. No yard. 3-story walk-up apartment/flop house. No work. The guy was very much unemployed and it took a police committal to get him to leave his apartment, which was immediately condemned. There was also sadly a cat and animal control involved. Also bed bugs, but those are a given. Sadly, mental health issues can make the weirdest behavior seem normal. Did a couple of tours in Iraq and went in hundreds of houses. Common thing was if they had a DVD player or some other kind of electronic device. They would always keep the styrofoam packing on the device. I don't know if they thought it was part of the DVD player or if it prevent dust from entering. Also saw a great number of what I call barn people. Pretty much kids that are too dysfunctional and mentally challenged to live with the rest of the family. So they keep them in the barn or shed. Pretty sad. My ex-wife's 90-year-old grandmother had 3 special vases that were her prized possessions. She would show them to everyone when they came over. They were bongs. Stems and bowls still on the side. No one ever had the heart to tell her. Flowers are flowers. I suppose. Not me. But when my dad was younger he went to a friend's house who had a hallway with nude family pictures. My friend refuses to vacuum and her carpet is covered in a layer of loose hair. He had a room that was off limits to touch. It was made up like a raving room but you weren't allowed down there. My friend, Todd, and I were both 10 years old. I spent a lot of time at his house, but always had the feeling that things were just off in some way. I didn't know what his mom did for a living, but I did know she slept until 2 p.m. daily. Todd told me that the overwhelming urine smell in the basement was from his cat. But I couldn't understand how one cat was capable of that stench. His mom and stepdad eventually were caught and did prison time for manufacturing crystal meth. Edit. Someone asked what became of Todd. The story is in the reply to that comment. Dog shit. Old, crusty, along with fresh and smelly pit bull shit. All over the living room. While he'd just sit and watch TV in the room. As if it wasn't even there. Yeah. This was my house. Yeah. This was my roommate. I'd pick it up. Let the dog out, try to housebreak it. He did nothing. As I packed up my stuff to move out, I stopped picking up the doo. Thinking he'd man up. Nope. I had to step around those massive landmines as I moved out. This is like my 3rd post to this thread. It has become clear to me that I know some pretty dysfunctional people. A 5-year-old in diapers. I was an adult literacy volunteer and I went to this couple's trailer. A kid walks in shirtless, wearing a diaper. At first, I thought it was a joke. Then I thought maybe developmental issues. Then the mother says about time to change that diaper, ain't it? And the boy said defiantly, "You ain't gonna change my diaper." Double quote. We had a human skull in a glass case in our living room growing up. It was years before I figured out that was really weird. My mom got it from a doctor friend or something. Just some random head. Not like a relative or anything. We called him Freddy and had to super glue his jaw back on every few years when it fell off. I guess I had repressed the memories, but just typing this now I recall touching it and playfully tossing it around gently at times. Sleepover when I was 12 or 13. Woke up and went to use the John. Bathroom door is wide open. My buddy and his older brother are brushing their teeth. Their dad is taking a dump. And their naked mom was jumping out of the shower. It was a small house with a 1-bathroom type situation. Which I get. The problem for me was the fact that all of the family members were gigantic. Like their mom was the smallest at 6 feet 3, 250-ish. As a short man not used to that sort of thing. Total shock. Edit. I should have added that I noped out of the situation pretty quick. I'm not 100% sure the mom saw me see her. Edit. Also my buddy was older than me. Which would have made him closer to 14. Edit. I should have added that I noped out of the situation pretty quick. I'm not 100% sure the mom saw me see her. When I moved cities in grade 2 or 3 I didn't know anyone. I met someone the first day and he invited me to his house that weekend to stay over. Everything was great. We played GameCube and stayed up until 3 AM, the latest I had been awake up to that point. He said we had to sleep in the basement so that we don't wake his parents when we went upstairs. We'd go downstairs with our sleeping bags and immediately I knew something was wrong. The worst smell I've ever experienced filled my nostrils the further we descended. In the corner of the room was a bed covered in what looked like crusty blood and some pus-colored streaks. Turns out his mother had a home birth the week before and kept the sheets as a memento. I haven't been back since. When I was dating my first girlfriend in high school, I was invited over to her house for dinner and meet the parents, etc. At one point I was talking with her father in his study and noticed lots of old looking phallic objects on the shelves in the room. On closer inspection, they were mummified penises. Dozens of them. Turns out he was a urologist and an amateur archaeologist. My friend's dad. When I was a kid I used to stay for dinner as kids do. But the dad would not eat with us. The mom would make a plate of food, take it down the hall and slide it halfway under the door to the basement. A few seconds later the plate would slowly slide under the door. Nobody at the house seemed to think this was odd, but I thought it was weird as fuck. The other odd thing this family did was every weeknight at 7:00 on the dot, the family would clear out of the living room so the dad could come and watch Star Trek. Once the show was over, he would go back into the basement and the family would move back into the living room. F-king what? The father was quiet but seemed to be normal other than those odd habits. The family thought none of that was weird and my friend thought it was funny my dad ate with us at dinner. When I was in college I played the drums in a band and we would often practice at the guitar player's house because his parents didn't care about the noise. The family was weird and the house smelled. But the thing that got me was the filth. There was always dog shit somewhere and I don't think they ever flushed or cleaned a toilet. All of this was considered normal to them. Then one day the guy that played guitar walked over to the corner of the room and pissed on the floor. I was stunned. He wasn't drunk or anything like that. This was normal to him. His parents didn't care either. It was just how they did things. Girl from my previous work invited some of us over for dinner. As it turns out, she had removed the toilet seating from her toilet because it doesn't look good enough with it on. You actually had to sit on the thin ceramic rim. Edit. Since people have said this isn't uncommon in certain countries. This took place in Germany where toilets always have seats. I was friends with my little league baseball coach's son. One day I was invited to their house for a play date. As I walked through the door I saw a huge framed white cloth with some weird symbol. I didn't think much about it because at the time I didn't know WTF it was. My coach noticed me looking at it as I entered the house and said my granddad wore that. It's been in the family for years. Naturally I was like oh okay whatever and thought nothing of it again. Now that I am older, I realize what it was. KKK robe. Worst part is that I am not white. Lol. I went with a friend to his parents' house for Thanksgiving dinner. They had a large painting of a topless hooker doing blow off of another topless hooker's tit hanging over the dining room table. I had a friend named David and he invited me to his house once. Little did I know that his family were horrific hoarders. You couldn't see the floor of his house. And I was literally stepping in bowls filled with cereal. At one point, I saw a snake just slither through the refuse and immediately made up an excuse that I was sick so I could go home. What a nightmare. Throwing toilet paper in the trash bin next to the toilet. It smelled awful and you could see the brown smears. Absolutely disgusting to me. I was visiting a friend one time and we were about to go buy a 30 rack at the nearby liquor store. I tell him we need to stop by an ATM so I can pick up some cash to pay. He just turns and looks at me and goes, "Don't worry about it. We can just go to the money drawer." This kid's family literally kept a drawer full of $20 bills in the kitchen that you could just walk up to and grab whenever you needed something. It was pretty surreal. Probably the cat using the toilet. It just walked in, flushed a minute later, and walked out. The owner didn't even acknowledge it. At a friend's house when I was like 12. We went swimming, and after he took his trunks off, put them on the clothesline and just walked in the house like it was nothing. Stopped at the fridge and poured us some iced tea with his mom sitting there on the phone. Seemed so bizarre to me. Not as disgusting as so many of these. But in middle school, I went over to a friend's house, and upon using the main washroom, soon discovered that the toilet paper dispenser played It's a Small World After All whenever you took any TP off of it. It wasn't even done as an ironic haha thing either. He was an only child. And like 12. Just confusing. My ex-boss had put post-its all over her refrigerator nagging her husband about personal hygiene stuff. Jim, I need you to brush your teeth for 1 full minute today, and floss. Double quote. Embarrassing, right? Even if he had bad hygiene, which as far as I could tell, he didn't. Is that how you go about it? Shaming him in front of friends and family? This woman was also batshit cra at work. Just a terror. Incompetent high school type bully that really got off on seeing other people suffer. One day, he's gonna hang his wild years on a nail that he drove through her forehead. Just saying. I'd put money on it. I knew a girl who would get glasses of water, and whenever she couldn't finish the whole thing, she would dump the rest on the carpet because it just absorbs it. I came here to mention the friends who kept their bread in the oven. But clearly I'm out of my league. A cow tongue in place of a birthday cake. It wasn't like they couldn't afford a birthday cake either. They just had a cow tongue with a single candle in it. One summer when I was about 13, a friend of mine had a friend from her school that invited us over to go swimming in her pool. We go to her place and are shown to her room to change. As I'm changing, my friend suddenly whispers, "What the fuck?" Dot. I turn around and see a bunch of used sanitary pads lined up on this girl's desk. She comes to join us in her room and my friend flat out asks her what the pads are all about. She says very plainly they're for my dad so he can check that I'm not pregnant. My parents were in a bowling league and would bring me with them. I made friends with a girl who hung out at the bowling alley because she lived in a home on an acre next to it. She invited me to come to her house while my parents bowled. I asked my parents and they said I could. We walked to her house. And when I walk in, there is a lion cub chained to a coffee table in the front room. She asks me if I want to pet the lion. Of course I do. I pet the lion. We hang out. And I go back to the bowling alley like nothing happened. I tell my parents and they're like, "Sure, you pet a lion." Years later, when I am reading the paper, the girl and her family are arrested for illegally having exotic cats. I show my parents and have the best told you so moment in my life. I once looked at an apartment in Columbus. And when I went into the building manager's apartment to sign the lease, the walls of his entire living room were covered in machetes and severed mannequin breasts with hand-painted nipples. I immediately realized I had forgotten my wallet and driver's license in the car and beat a hasty retreat. I ended up renting a room in a house about a block away. About a year later, the guy was killed when a booby trap he had created with a live grenade blew up. First time I went over to a friend's house. I was walking into his room and he says, "Don't stand here. The carpet's crusty. For 8 years he's been jacking it in the same spot. Never washing it.